I shared before, but the time I was in the churchyard, brother flipped the bonnet and showed me his engine. Man, that was clean, really a clean engine. I thought to myself, it would be so good if we spent that much time trying to keep our hearts clean. The heart is what matters. The Bible says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. The heart is a seat of reason, of emotions, of the will. It is who we are at the core. So the lips might say X, if the heart says Y, Y is what counts. The Bible is clear on this, that the human heart is capable of anything. Deceitful, desperately wicked, who can know it, God said. And we have seen in our text that God hates the heart that devises wicked schemes. We want to explore this concept today. Look at the lives of Jezebel, David, and Jeroboam. We'll see that human beings can devise wicked schemes when they decide to encourage covetousness, first of all, then to escape consequences, and then to establish control. First of all, when we decide to encourage covetousness, Jezebel, 1 Kings 21, from verse 5 onward. Before this, Ahab desired a man's garden, and he couldn't get it. And he was sulking, and she came to him and said, you are the king. So why are you sad? And he says, well, neighbor will not sell me his vineyard. Verse 7. Jezebel, his wife, said unto him, dost thou not govern the king of Israel? Arise and eat food, that thy heart may merry. I will give thee the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. Now she could have tried to stop Ahab. She could have said, listen, the man has a right not to sell his vineyard. And you are king. You have so much. Just leave the man with what belongs to him. She doesn't do that. He says, in fact, since you are king, you can have anything you want. And I will make sure that you get Naboth's vineyard. And so the scheme is cooked up to get two worthless men themselves to swear falsely that Naboth blasphemed God and the king. Now, these are the same people, who are going after idols. And here they are now defending God. They're saying, this man spoke evil of God. And so they organized everything and got the two men as witnesses against Naboth. And Naboth is stoned to death. Innocent man dying because of greed, and those are willing to be false witnesses. You may recall before we spoke about God hating the false witness. Well, it's the same thing that's happening here. So, what follows from this? The man of God pronounced something against Jezebel. 1 Kings 21, verse 23. And of Jezebel also spoke the Lord, saying, the dogs shall eat Jezebel. by the word of Jezreel. Man of God said, dogs are going to eat your flesh. And as God said, so it happened. 2 Kings 9, verse 33 onwards. When Jehu comes in as a destroyer of Ahab's house, Jezebel is thrown from a window and trampled. And before she could be buried, the dogs ate her. In fact, all that was left of Jezebel were the skull, the feet, and the hands. Oh, it sounds so gory, doesn't it? But there's a law of sowing and reaping. You plant corn, you're going to get corn. Jezebel won, but only for a little while. In the end, she paid, because God does not sleep. So when anybody sits down and plans all these schemes to destroy others, in the end, they are going to pay. Jezebel paid. So what is this saying to us? And that's really where we want to get when we read these things. It is saying to us that when we are greedy, when we see things and we want to get them, it can result in deadly consequences. And so what should we do? We must learn, first of all, to be content with what we have. Hebrews 13, verse 5. When you are content, you can make do. You see, this is what I have. I'm going to work with it. I don't focus on what looks nice or what somebody else has. I work with what I have. You see, when we start saying, I've got to have it, we are treading on dangerous ground. When I want something too badly, I will do whatever I need to do to get it. And we are now in what, well, they said it's a nice time. It's also a very silly time. A lot of strange things happen around this time of the year. People see things and say, I must get that, I must get that. When you start saying that, you're heading for trouble. Remember this, that we are worth more than anything that looks nice out there that will dazzle our eyes. Who are we? A chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a special people. We are called to display the glory of God. And so, during this time of Christmas, let's remember who we are and not be focused on getting. Yes, we make some bad choices in trying to get the things that we want. It also means we must gently rebuke or redirect those who are displaying covetousness. We are given an exhortation by Paul, 1 Thessalonians 5:14, to warn those who are unruly. Unruly here means out of line, deviating from the path. So when a fellow believer seems to be going after certain things, boy, I see something, I must get that. Let's remind that person that life is not about the things that we have. You see, people tell themselves, if I get this thing or that thing, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be really living. Lord says, no. Life is not about things. It's about knowing God personally. The word says, godliness with contentment is great gain. It's not about things. Remember that during this time. Interestingly, beloved, the last commandment in the 10 is thou shalt not covet. What's the first one? You will have no God apart from me. We tend to remember first things and last things. Now, Paul tells us, Ephesians 5, that coveting is idolatry. What's he saying, just beloved? God is speaking twice. The first and last commandment are in a sense the same thing. It's God and God alone. And so when God speaks twice, we need to sit up and listen. We devise wicked schemes when we encourage covetousness. That's the first thing. Secondly, we look at the life of David, 2 Samuel 11. And you might ask the question, what is David's name doing here between Jezebel and Jeroboam? It doesn't make sense. Well, we were traveling back from Texas recently. I was talking to a young man who was in the window seat. We had a basic conversation. I wasn't involved in it. But I could hear bits and pieces. And then he said, I have a problem with the Bible, with the Old Testament, with all these things, the war and the killing. Then he said, let my husband answer that. He put that to me. That's what women do. Anyway, but I said to the young man, the Bible is a book of many books. And some books are history. And if it's history, it records human life. It would have the war, killing, etc. It's just what happened. So the Bible is a very honest book. It tells you what happened, not what should have happened or what you'd like to happen. So it records the failures of people like David to tell us there's only one perfect man, Jesus Christ. It records everything. The good, bad, and the ugly is there. And so, David, 2 Samuel 11, we see his schemes. The scheming began when Bathsheba told David that she was pregnant. 2 Samuel 11, from about verse 5. Well, you see, you remember the story. David should have been at war. He's home relaxing. He goes to a walk, sees a woman bathing, asks who is this woman? That's Bathsheba, Uriah's wife. Could have stopped there, he didn't. Sent for her, went to this house, there was sexual intercourse. She becomes pregnant. It's a natural consequence of intercourse. When you make choices, beloved, expect consequences. So what does David do? He sends for Uriah, 2 Samuel 6 onwards, that he might come home and go to his house and do what men normally do. It's normal in a marriage. And he would think that was his child. That was the plan. But Uriah had different ideas. Here's a man who is loyal to his fellow soldiers. He said, no, I can't do this. My comrades are out there fighting. Why should I come home and go to my wife as if things are normal? Uriah does not go home. What does David do? Verse 12 of 2 Samuel 11 onwards. David gets Uriah drunk. Well, if the man drunk, he might go home. But despite being drunk, Uriah's presence of mind to not go home. He doesn't go home. So David is now desperate. He does one last thing. From verse 14 of 2 Samuel verse 15, gives the man a letter to take to Joab, put Uriah in the hottest part of the battle, and retire from him, that he might be killed. Well, imagine the situation. How loyal this man is. He doesn't open letter at all. In his innocence and loyalty, he takes the letter to Joab. Now, beloved, David's actions did not occur in the heat of passion. And sometimes you're angry and you do things you don't want to do normally. But this was not anger. These things were cold and calculated. The actions of a man trying to escape his consequence. But you know what? David did not escape because God saw everything. And in time he sent Nathan. And he said, David, because you have done this, you will have trouble in your own house. And as Nathan spoke, so it happened. 2 Samuel 13, 23 to 33. One of David's sons killed his brother as revenge for the rape of his sister. Yes, ugly stuff. And son, it's history. It happened. That same son, Absalom, rebelled against David. And David had to run for his life. 2 Samuel 15, 13 to 23. Running from his own son. But what else? David lost moral authority. Joab had no respect for David. And I guess you know why. He could add 2 and 2. You tell me, kill this man. Then you take the man's wife. So Joab knew what had happened. No respect. The 2 Samuel 18, verse 5 onwards. David begs Joab, go easy with Absalom for my sake. Go easy with the young man. Joab finds Absalom hanging from the oak. What does Joab do? He kills him. And when David is grieving for Absalom, Joab comes again and says, oh, you're bawling for your son. You wish we had died. Joab, no respect. And in all of this, David is powerless. When you make wrong choices, you lose moral authority. David lost. He suffered. Now, what is it saying to us? And again, this is where we are coming out and we share these things. No, it is natural for us to try to escape consequences. I'm sure you know in a home, when something is broken, it's always not me. Always not me. Remember as well, I went to some office once, and by the way, as we go to offices and banks and so on, check your documents. Don't just take what they give you. You might give you the wrong thing. And remember, I had to get my certificate for insurance. So I pointed out to the lady. You know what she said to me? If you had left the office, you come back, I'd have sworn I gave it to you. Because we want to protect ourselves. That is how we are naturally. But you see, sometimes when we try to do that, we can create other problems. I was in a pharmacy once. A young lady came up to the pharmacist, quite desperate, wanted a pill for abortion. Was there a pill for abortion? I don't know the pill, but she wanted to find it. So you take certain actions to avoid consequences and create other problems. So some might get the abortion and live with the guilt of having taken a life. Short-term solution, but long-term consequences. So that's one thing can happen. But also, when you try to escape your consequences, you can hurt innocent people. There's a lady in a house, working in a house, and she's stealing from her employer, taking out the food, everything, and blaming it on a student who was living in the same house. Until one morning, something happened. Student was actually having breakfast with the owner of the house. And then the lady came and gave us the orders. They stole things and blamed it on the student. The boss said, no, but he had breakfast with me. Then she said, oh, but he has a breakfast second time every morning. Just trying to find something. And in the end, she lost her job. It's when they got 50-40. Trying to escape consequences and create bigger problems. God hates the heart that devises wicked schemes. The third example is Jeroboam. 1 Kings 12, from verse 26 to 33. Here the idea is to establish control, to devise a scheme. You may recall Jeroboam broke away from Rehoboam and became the king of the northern kingdom, which was called Israel, as opposed to Judah. And like most people who seized power, he lived in fear. All those guys who become dictators who might have a stage a coup and take over a country, they live in fear. Now he told himself, if the people that went to him to worship, they might turn back to Rehoboam. He would lose his kingdom. So what does he do? He says, Jerusalem is too far for you to go to worship. That's too hard. So he sets up two golden calves, one down in the north, better in the south, and he says, these are your gods who brought you out of Egypt. Worship these gods. Don't go to Jerusalem to worship. So what this means is this. He led the nation into idolatry, into false worship. As I've said before, the biggest threat to God's people in any age is idolatry. And if you think of the church today and why we are so weak and ineffective in this country, I'm convinced it's idolatry. There are certain things that are so important to us that God has pushed aside, and that's why we are so weak. There are idols, there are people that we worship above God, and that's our problem. Jeroboam, in his scheming, the greatest service to the nation. Remember this, beloved. Leaders impact their followers for good or for evil. To lead any people is a solemn responsibility. Solomon understood that, He said, God gave me wisdom to lead your people. Jeroboam didn't see God's wisdom. He got his own scheme to keep control of Israel. And that brought consequences. 2 Chronicles 13, from verse 3 onwards. He was defeated soundly by Judah, by Abijah. Even though he had twice the number of soldiers that Abijah had, he lost. Even though he did the right thing by attacking from in front and behind. But here's what made the difference. God fought for Judah. When God fights against you, You can never win. So he was defeated strongly. And you know what? He never recovered from that. And in the end, it says in verse 20 of 2 Corinthians 13, he was smitten by God, destroyed. But here's what has really grabbed my attention about Jeroboam. He made history for the wrong reason. You see, here's how he's remembered. 1 Kings 15:34. As the man who made Israel to sin. What are we to be remembered? He made Israel to sin. A mark against his name forever. It could not be erased. Beloved, if we're going to make history, let's make history for a good reason. Let's be challenged by this. Because, believe it or not, when we leave the scene, we'll be remembered. But for what? But for what? So, what's it saying to us at the end of the day? Well, you see, man was meant to rule creation, to have dominion over creation. But because of the fall, that has become corrupted. And man wants to dominate, to control others. And so, as he tries to dominate, you can create schemes to sabotage those you see as a competition. So here we have a case at Peter's College. Here's a good student who is before the exam, his notebook disappears. Make sure he can study. What people do. Or you're in a youth group, and people make sure that everything you do fails. They know all the answers, after the thing has failed. Or in the church, you might have leaders to themselves, maybe as preachers, and they make sure if somebody's a preacher or a crusade, that it fails. These things happen. Let's be warned by these things, You see, in God's kingdom, the focus is on service, not on control. You want to be great in our death? Serve. That I came not to be served, but to serve. Get my life around to many. The power and glory belong to God. When man fights for the power and the glory, the kingdom will go to waste. Don't fight for control over anything. Don't go on talking about, I need to keep control. And he devised the scheme. And he paid. He paid. So we have seen, beloved, what puts us at risk for devising wicked schemes. When we decide to encourage covetousness, we may end up planning certain things. So Jezebel had Naboth killed. That says to us, beloved, to learn to be content with what we have and encourage others to do the same. It is not about what we have or what we can get. We be content, learn to be content. Secondly, we devise wicked schemes, but we want to escape consequences. We do wrong and want to escape consequences. We devise a scheme. So David has Uriah killed. Let us be prepared, beloved. When we make our bed, to lie on it. Don't try to escape and hurt innocent people in the process. Thirdly, we devise wicked schemes when we want to establish control. We want to make sure we are number one. We go after the nation into idolatry. Remembered as a man who made Israel to sin. Let's remember this. In God's kingdom, it's not about control. It's about service. And finally, let's remember this. God hates the heart that devises a wicked scheme. And let's pray like David, create in me a clean heart.